to see the love inside my challenges? What if there was a creative essence inside that same challenge? If I relax into it, not give up, not bypass and forget, what story, what wisdom is inside there? The Gene Keys can be a contemplative tool that teaches me about myself. There are many ways, many keys to open the one door of love. And that brings hope to places that a lot of divisiveness in our world keeps us isolated, keeps us siloed, keeps us alone. But then you have people going on deep pilgrimages, whether it's through spiritual traditions or through medicines or through their own meditations or through their own family trauma and crisis. What an amazing way to find love. So there's many fractal ways that we enter into that moment. We're actually all connected. We're connected through our suffering. Even though I'm one person, I won't be able to move a mountain, but me doing my inner work is connected into this fractal.
There goes a sight from my soul.
Welcome back to the Inspired Evolution. And we have with us today, Elijah, I don't want to say your last name. It doesn't feel right for me. I've never really known you as Elijah Parker. I only know you as Elijah. But ladies and gentlemen, it is Elijah Parker. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
It is such an honor to have you here. For those tuning into Elijah for the first time, a bio, man, is a tough thing to do for this man. So I believe he's here to inspire mindfulness and magic in the world. Many would say his mastery lies in blending left brain, right brain. He applies himself to a wide range of technical skills. We're talking animations, video editing, music, project management, web development, online learning facilitation, systems, virtual retreats. I think you did a degree in intermodal expressive art. You're definitely an inspirational speaker. As a Gene Keys consultant, you're a holographic consultant. You support individuals and organizations in personal and collective transformation. I kind of know you as the Gene Key wizard, musician, tech wizard. I know you love tea. There is so much ground we could cover. And my biggest challenge today is to not talk to you about handpans because it's something we both love because it's not the context of where this podcast is meant to go. But I love you, bro. It's so good to have you here. Thank you.
Overflowing. Thank you so much. Love it.
And I wanted to keep myself railed in the conversation, I wanted to start with, hey, like, what was... A lot of us sort of crack open to things when there are things going on in our lives and, you know, we're either facing challenges or synchronicity happened and something amazing dropped in. I think I just would love to know a little bit of context because I see so much of you in and around the Gene Keys. What was going on in Elijah's life when the Gene Keys he just sort of found the Gene Keys or the Gene Keys found him? I know either or probably both happened at the same time. But yeah, can you tell us a little bit about that, bro?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, you got to love that weird connection of it finding you at the exact right moment. And, you know, I've been doing this now for, I think, 12 years. I think I calculated it. I've been around and working with the Gene Keys. And the first moment, the book is on the table. My love of my life is showing me this thing, and I hated it. I thought it was the...
Can't say that, bro.
But I think it was the resistance to my cynical... I have a cynical brain. I have my human is gritty, and you know me. I also have this like priestly love of life, this poet, this musician, and when I touched this book and it told me right at the top of my chart that I had the shadow of greed. How quickly it just touched all these places. I'm not greedy. I don't have it. That's not me. And the journey of falling in love with the Gene Keys was a journey of falling in love with those parts of myself and seeing the brilliance inside, really knowing myself so intimately. So I joke that it was a hate at first sight because it clearly wrapped me in my life. And I think that the main things that drew me there were that it was a family-oriented prophet, right? Our bard, Richard Rudd, was a dad, was a man, was a brilliant being, but also a human. And I got to find my own path of divinity and inspiration and art and also deep, deep humanity. And at a time in my life when I left home, was journeying into community, into a whole new world and falling in love, it was exactly what I needed to keep on a path of growth that was grounded in both self-reflection and honesty and the dream of what we're to become.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, what dropped in for me is reflecting on my own process of just how I came to work on my shadows, but I stayed to honor my gifts and revel in my cities. Like, it's just, you know, and I could totally resonate. It wasn't actually until I was ready to work on my shadows that the gene keys didn't come across my path, which was really interesting to feel into that. And becoming a gene keys guide has been, well, like learning to hold space for other people's shadows and that realization. And I do run the risk of just driving straight into the Gene Keys portal and this turning into a total Gene Keys thing. But just a little bit of context for those that are tuning in. I will front load my question with every time someone asks me what the Gene Keys are, I come up with a different response every single time. And knowing how like multidimensional you are, I'm sure it's somewhat similar. What is the Gene Keys for us today?
Today, I like that. That's the real question. Okay, today, an adventure of 64 ways to see the love inside my challenges and to find the creative essence of who I naturally am, what I'm learning to love about myself, but also who I'm dreaming to become. I think that's what is so magic about the Gene Keys is it's evolutionary. It is my choices and my practice with life and the involution of grace, the allowing of this divinity, the allowing of love, the allowing of grace in my life. So I think that merger of evolution and involution for me is why the Gene Keys can be a contemplative tool that teaches me about myself and creates a language I can share with others.
I love that. And so going back to your story a little bit there, you found the Gene Keys to work on yourself, and then you started the practice and the art of contemplation working on the Gene Keys. As you're working on yourself through the Gene Keys, you've obviously got your profile, you're contemplating your spheres. What sort of drew you in so close to the Gene Keys now that you're one of the, well, I look at you as one of the master facilitators in the space. And it's actually, I'll sort of just pop open my head and give you a little insight into how I look at the world. I see Richard as the mystic, I see you as the wizard, and Tanmayo as the oracle. It's kind of, and I'm Dorothy down the rabbit hole. Sometimes it feels like. but all jokes aside, how did how can you explain to us a little bit about the journey of you landing to where you are now? Because so many people know you through the role that you play in the Gene Keys, and I'm conscious that there is so much more to your life than the Gene Keys as well. Fractal Doors, your SoundCloud music, there's so much, and I'm conscious not to limit it to just the Gene Keys, but I think no one really knows how this sort of transpired, and I'd love to sort of answer that question for him. Yeah,
that's great. I love that story. When I found the Gene Keys, I also found like I said, the love of my life at the time, beautiful Bina Zing, and we started a community called Wonderland, and it was a art and music community, and so it was that fresh part of my youth of creating and dancing and exploring and discovering myself. And we needed a technology, I think. We needed a practice because a lot of people are orphaned from lineage. They don't have role models. We don't have practices that feel actually thriving and nourishing for a lot of people, at least that I've experienced. And so when the Gene Keys came into our life, it was like this trilogue. Instead of getting locked in the dialogue of each person, it was like, oh, we had this beautiful poetic book and this mystery profile, and we started to walk it ourselves and make art about it and live it in our lives. And that expanded to naturally we wanted to share that through our art and our music and give it as a gift back to Richard, who we just loved so dearly. And we were actually like plotting this long plot of we're going to record a video, we're going to send it to him, we're just going to introduce ourselves, and we open our email and Richard's just there and, hey, I saw something that you created and I'm coming to Portland, do you want to connect? And he never actually made it into the United States that year, but we began a friendship and a communion and began exploring. I think there was a revival at that time because he had stepped away from the Gene Keys for many years and was in his family life and was carving spoons, as he will share, and so I think there was this revival moment, those synchronistic lines just cross. And ever since that moment, I've dipped in and out. I've done many things in my life, but the Gene Keys has been this golden thread, this reminder inside my life. And I think it just kind of like through osmosis just slowly became so much a part of me. And I'm so honored to now be Richard's friend and collaborator and Tenmayo, as you said, and all of the people in the organization.
Yeah,
know?
it's a total trip as well because I can just feel from what you're sharing and just my experience of having had Richard on it is so refreshing. And this is just one question about Richard for yourself and myself to just reflect on, I guess. But I don't know what it's been like for you, but in so many other modalities in life, the person that's sort of holding the spoon for you to drink the medicine can be so far removed from you, like in terms of you just feel energetically so far away from them, even though you value what they're bringing to you. With Richard, it's almost the opposite. It's like, oh yeah, okay, so there's a delta between here and there, and the next minute, just like you said, he's in your email going, kunk kunk, hello. And you're like, wait, what? And it's really, I have to say, leadership's an interesting conversation, but I think, yeah, it's really inspiring just to feel the warmth and the intimacy in that's available to us. Do you reflect on that yourself?
Absolutely. I think that's what has actually kept me here. To work with the Gene Keys is transformational for yourself. To work with it as my business and my life for so many years, it rocks me. It has transformed me. It's caused, there's been ups and downs as everyone has gone through for years. But when I reflect on this person who is a devoted father and husband and lover of animals and lover of nature, the presence is palpable. And that, in a way, all of the transcendence kind of doesn't matter if we're not here living that as humans. And so I'm really grateful to find I have many great teachers in my life, and he's one of those that holds that human spirit, that present spirit, where the divine can be here in our connection. And that's just gold to me.
Yeah, invaluable. So you're super cynical at one point about the Gene Keys. You're reading this book and it's like, greed, man, I'm not greedy. Give me that. And then you've started to realize there's something in there. Is that the first contemplation you had? Because I do want to ask about shadows, gifts, and cities, and that's kind of where I'm leading. But I would love to sort of understand how the cynic became the convert in this journey.
That's a great question. Yeah, I think it really was that. I think one of the things is Gene Keys, one of the things, the magic of it is reclaiming certain words and understanding layers of words. And so this idea of 64 names of love, there's all these myriad ways that we could describe divine love, those cities, those highest states of beauty and unity and ecstasy. They're names of God, right? They're just these high states. And the shadows are these names of wounds. And to really get to know them has been an intimacy practice. And so it was parallel or maybe a catalyst for a lot of much more deeper introspective work at here are my conditioning patterns, here are my unconscious biases, here are things that I'm just not seeing about myself, or things that society has a part of me, even if it doesn't feel like it's a genuine truth for me, I'm still a part of that shadow pattern, I'm still a part of that challenge. And so suddenly there was this the surrender, just I'll let this in a little. I'll allow the shadow to be here, to be me for a moment. And instead of like maybe some other systems that I feel pigeonhole you to, you are this number, you are this archetype. It was a doorway. It's a key, right? It just says, hey, open this door and see what occurs for you in the contemplative process. And when I genuinely open that with love in my heart and a little bit of cynicism and a little bit of openness, the flood of wisdom that came out. And then, of course, it wasn't long before you read that chapter or you listen to the audio. Wait a minute, this person's speaking directly my life story. Uncanny, right?
That thing right there is, and because similar to you, like you're Capricorn, I'm Virgo, very earth, very grounded, like order, like structure. And it's, I relate to you in that sort of, and then there's a piece in there when you first crack open your Gene Keys and you're like, okay, so I'll just put in my numbers on the internet and put in my birth time and it's going to tell me who I am. Sure, here we go. And you get your hologenetic profile and you're starting to read through and you're like, you sort of look around and you're like, wait, what? And it's just, and therein lied the first rub for me, just how much it felt like this was genuinely, it felt like ChatGPT before ChatGPT. Right. Yeah. It was like, this is actually talking to me. Like, this is, how does this know what my biggest, like what my life's work is, what my biggest pain points, and that's exactly what I've been challenged with the whole time. And that, the appropriateness of it, usually I find, even with star signs, I found myself doing stuff in the past and, going, oh yeah, that could be me, or I could live into that, or, but with this, it was just like, no, it was like, oh, that, oh, that actually cuts real deep. Like that's actually exactly where I land. And then I thought it might have just been me, and I was nervous for a while not sharing it with too many people. I was just like, oh, here's my kooky little exploration, the Gene Keys, and I'm going along on these little retreats with people all over the world online and not telling anybody about it, learning all this stuff about me, enjoying, really loving it. There's a whole conversation to be had, by the way. The Gene Keys website that you built is just like the most intuitive, gorgeous thing oh my God, it's a beast of a thing, and yet it is so elegant, in awe of the way your mind works. And the key thing in there was everybody that I've introduced it to, it's like that. You watch them, they read their profile, and then you watch their face, and they're like, it's like the head comes in, and it's like, oh, it's like this visceral sort of, oh, that actually is speaking, and wow, I'm learning something about. And it happened. Not once has it not happened, and I've introduced it to, I could say, dozens of people. Having worked with like over 250 coaching clients, like everyone I introduce, like every client that I've introduced the Gene Keys to, they're like, and they've learned more about themselves. The appropriateness to what applied to you, was that a big part of what called you in as well?
Absolutely. And I think that there's a piece of wisdom that if it appears to emerge out of me and with me and I'm a part of it, it feels way more, it's cellular. It's including me. Because all of this wisdom is inside us. It's not a top-down information system of I'm inadequate and I have to learn this thing in order to be better. It is like reading your biography, maybe from a higher perspective in some ways, right? A different galactic perspective for a moment, but it's including me. And I think that the moment that suddenly it touches wait a minute, that feels really tender and real, I've now imbibed, I've now let wisdom come in and emerge from me. And I think that's what's so critical about systems, not just being here's the system, you just have to do this technique, you just have to do this thing, and you can be successful, better, whatever it is. But when we're included, when we have agency that actually is listening to us, reflecting us, because all of the wisdom asks us to have that level of intimacy with our shadows, with our gifts, with our bodies, with the wisdom here. That's the real gem for me. Is it? In a lot of ways, I name it as that adventure, because it's like a quest to come find out the thing that was already here, and if it does that, it's actually real wisdom. If it's, oh, this is me, that feels like closer to living wisdom as opposed to knowledge, if that makes sense.
It totally does. And there's a little piece in there that I'd like to remark on and get your thoughts on. Is I'm just realizing this now as I'm chatting to you, it gave me a little bit more permission to be just that little bit more me, to look at those little bits that I just wouldn't go to. That permission usually piece is really acceptance and acceptance. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, please, your thoughts.
They're so tender there, and I just, usually it gives me the perfect piece of candy to be with something even deeper, because I think that's what we also... honestly, the adventure word keeps coming back, because it's like, it's hard to do self-work. It's if you don't have a debilitating disease, a crisis of marriage, something literally challenging you with every part of your being, you won't change. Why? We're lazy. We love to be comfortable. We're humans. So when you can go on a journey of, I will be more intimate to this part of myself that I didn't want to look at before, and it's also infused with, because you're also these gifts. It's not either or. You don't have to get rid of this thing and then you'll be a superhero. It's, look at how that thing is deeply connected to your superhero nature, to your loving nature. And actually, instead of getting rid of it, let's actually massage it, listen to it, let it unfold, and see that same resistance is now vitality I get to use. I mean, that's free energy in a way.
Yeah, it's definitely an expansion of something that has the potential to contract so much, and actually, in many times I felt was a contracted part that I didn't even know was aware that it was contracted. The key, let's break that down for those listening in, because this was novel for me when I tuned into the Gene Keys. Some of the people tuning into this episode know you, love you. Some of those people tuning into this episode, Gene Keys is the first time you've heard anything about them. There are 3 layers, dimensions. What are they, bro? What and how do you identify them? Because different people through the trainings have given different advice on how to work with the different layers, and I have to admit, there are some things that you said along the way that have resonated with me the most, which is why there's a real kinship in this conversation for me personally, but I'm sure that everybody will get different things from different facilitators. But yeah, what are those three things? And maybe we can discuss about them a little bit further. We've touched on them already a couple of times, but if we can go a little bit into each of them, like with a bit of depth, like our shadows and what you described in terms of, yeah, I'll stop preloading the answer and let you speak to it.
Yeah, great. I'm just very excited to also hear you explain them as you've been exploring this. And one term that I do still love is the spectrum of consciousness, right? And instead of layers that feel like a ladder crawling up,
and there's limits between each of the but there's not.
But there's not, and I often really actually even see them as a torus, and because I think that we tend to have an achieving mind, a seeking mind, a linear mind that tries to move up the layers instead of understanding they're all happening. You know, that's one of the things about the Gene Keys is it's holographic, it's hologenetic, it's happening on multiple layers all at once. So the shadow is generally considered that low vibration, a victim state, a challenge. And for me, like what you said, constriction. That's the shadow is always energy in some sort of constricted, contorted, confused state. And that shows up in repressive and reactive ways, where it could show up as a feeling of entropy and depression and unable to move, or inertia. And it could show up as provocation and struggle and desire and half-heartedness. And that's triggers. All these different words. Yeah, triggers. Yeah. It's a really great, because we're not those states, but they're triggering a response inside us, a victim response inside us. And so inside that is a gift, right? That's the journey, is that every shadow contains a gift. And I love that simple wisdom. And it's easy to say and hard to do, but it's very wise. What if there was a creative essence inside that same challenge? And if I relax into it, not give up, not bypass and forget, but relax into, what story, as I emotionally allow that shadow, what story does it have to tell me? What wisdom is inside there? For me, it was judgment to integrity. That was the Gene Key that popped me. It's my core in the profile of my cynical mind would see all judgment, would see all the ways that the container is broken. There's systemic oppression. There's that thing inside myself that's still creating that wound. That's you hurting me with those words. That's me hurting you with these words. Judgment is very focused, and it's constricted in its story, but it's sharp. Pointing to what's been sharp swords, like, and it's pointing to what's been spoiled. It's pointing to what's been leaked. And integrity asks that question of, what if that awareness was here to bring vitality, to bring upliftment, to bring gold into the situation, to recreate structural integrity, starting with myself, starting with, it's always my fault. It's all my fault. Yeah, if it's all my fault, I also have responsibility. I have agency. I have the capacity to embody the values of integrity that I want to live in the world. And that journey was a really important thing, to see the same razor sharp mind didn't have to be a wound, but I had to relax the part of my mind that was really pointed, like that sword that you just said. And that, for me, I think is the gift of relaxing into my shadow and allowing it to show a creative essence.
I do want to get to the city, but I also want to ask you how, because I'm conscious we might be selling the Gene Keys too hard here. It's not all fun and games. How long do you think you worked on that loosely? I know the Art of Contemplation is
till today, 12 years. That's, I mean, this is not a fast path. This isn't something that, and it's not a fix-all either. It's wisdom paths for me, contemplative paths for me. They're a way of walking. So I've had layers every year, I would say, of, that's why I love, even today, you can open that book and I can read something that I've read the Gene Keys many, many times. I've listened to every key. I've done my own contemplations of every key, but they don't go away, because you open it and you read something and it's new. It's a new layer of where I'm at with wisdom. And that's why you could just use one Gene Key and have infinite layers of opportunity, and for me, at first it was, I always felt I'm always at fault. And so like getting really deep into that part of my self-judgment was really important. And then the next layer was the judgment of others and the judgment of how I think I'm better than, and all these subtle unconscious biases that I'm enabling by the way that I'm walking in the world. Like that could be an endless like mess up, right? That could be a prison of pain. And
Yeah.
so to have integrity and perfection, the city there inside that spectrum, to keep me moving through that journey, because I could have gotten lost a long time ago just in my head. And I'm
Hmm.
really grateful that there were these pathways of forgiveness and gentleness and patience that actually said that you can live a life of integrity and still make mistakes, that you can be into gritty. And actually, that's critical to being in this integrity that you so seek. The perfection that I seek is in my imperfection, choosing to be on a journey of perfecting, that aspiration was real and to be valued.
Yeah. You've touched on the, thank you so much for sharing that. And you've touched on the city. And can we get a little bit more of an understanding of what the roles of the cities are for us? Because I can see the shadow opening into the gift. And yeah, the cities a little bit, just a little.
The Sanskrit word, one of its references is divine essence. And when I said the Taurus, this is for me what the city is what if in every direction we were held by the vibration of love, by the vibration of compassion, by these city words, beauty, unity, these words that we long for, these words that we pray for, these words that we refuse to think are real because of our cynical minds, and yet secretly hope for because we're begging our heads against the struggle of trying to be human. And right at the center of the Taurus, that's what the city is for me, is the peace that exists as the fundamental frequency. And from that, the Taurus expands all the way out to the edges of the shadow of this bizarre illusion of us in these two different bodies. And the gift is the rushing back home, rushing back into that peace. And so the cities aren't things to attain. They're not just superpowers that, oh, I hope I can one day be enlightened. I hope I can seek that state. But rather for me, they're agents of grace that I relax into. And for me personally, I will be honest, I don't believe I will be a city until I'm no longer a consciousness, a linear consciousness thinking. But I drink them, I imbibe them, I remember them, I call to them inside this moment, and they help me have hope in a potentially hopeless time. And that for me is the grace of a city.
Man, thank you so much for sharing that. And having worked with the Gene Keys for a while, yeah, that part was super, super huge for me. The way you described, I'll speak to both of them. The first one about like the shadows helping us open into our gift. And even a couple of times you said, definitely contemplate your shadows, but don't allow it to become your obsessive focus. Like your focus is the gift. That's the gift of it. The shadow is just the key opening up the doorway for you to open into what the gift is actually holding for you. The irony being you can't really access the gift without looking at the shadow. And, that wisdom has been super tight because I think, like I said, we come for the shadow work, and it can be so easy to go, oh, okay, I've got these 12 shadows. It's like, here we go. Oh my God. Right? And then just being able to go, actually, those are if I work with that, it'll bloom into this. Even just the hope that gives me is really robust. And then, I really love the way you look at the cities because I spent my first time going through the activation sequence just trying to like reach for a star and just go, this city is so like, how do I just, if I work through this one, I'm going to get, and I don't feel quite enlightened just yet, but okay, it's time to move on to the next key. I can feel it, but I didn't quite grab the city, And it's like, then coming across your teachings, which was like, I think the city, and the way I look at it, not too dissimilar to you, but they're the points of consciousness in some way that are fueling the shadow and the city, and I'm just experiencing reality as them. And it's informing me completely through the shadow and the gift, and my focus in this human experience is to try and allow the shadow to turn into the gift. And I only really I can articulate that way because I'm standing on the insights of your shoulders, really. It's been really a gift to be able to even just look at it that way. And I'll go as far as saying, brother, it goes beyond the Gene Keys for me. Like I coach many people outside on different things. Some of them you know, some of them are complete wizards and some of them are complete muggles. And when we're talking with the muggles, it's still really useful just to be able to be like, okay, everything that you're doing has this kind of shadow, gift, and siddhi. And then you explain that and they go, what is the silver lining in this? And what are you really at the heart of this, learning again and again? You keep making the same mistake or you keep learning the same lessons in life. And it's just something so helpful to come back to as a modality. So thank you is really what I'm trying to say.
That's amazing to hear and reflect like that. That's it. That's wisdom, because it translates to any. It doesn't need the flowery language if it's true, if it's pointing to a truth. So I just really want to honor you for bringing that wisdom into all these different streams, as so clearly you do.
Thank you, bro. My core, when we're discussing cores, was is doubt. And I think that is a really interesting one because the podcast exists because of my gift of inquiry, consistent inquiry. And I'll go as far as very rarely do you find a teaching where people like yourself, people like Tanmaya, and people like Richard are like, yeah, doubt me. Oh, please, that's your core. Do it, bro. Do it. And you're like, what the? This is really hard because it's hard to doubt when people are telling you to doubt. It's like, what is this medicine I'm drinking right now? And it's an incredible community, bro. It's a really incredible community. You've been a part of it for 12 years. You've watched it blossom and grow. It's kind of wild what's going on now, and I still feel like it hasn't reached its like tipping point towards the zenith that it's going. Touch wood. It still feels like it's just popping out of the incubator in some ways. Your reflection on the Gene Keys community and just how the journey's been and what you receive out of it.
I love that. I'm so glad to hear your reflections just of our community too, because it lights me up, and it's amazing how it's been digital for me for a long time, like pre-pandemic. It was like I was doing this virtual retreats like before that happened, and so suddenly there was this blossom in that way of a lot of people indoors and a lot of people only having digital connection. But that was always what sparked me about the Jinkies community, as I met through my in-person community, but then definitely through online, a global family, not family, like Sangha is the closer word, of a community of like-minded, like-hearted beings, not of the same irk at all. You get some of the wildest and some of the most, mundane, if you want to call it that, like this most simple and the most extravagant, but it was a community of people looking to find the gift in their shadow. That was what connected us. And there was a spark in Richard's brilliant bardic poetry that we said, that makes sense to me. There's something that resonates. So I got to learn about cultures and global. I got to go to Romania. I would have never gone to Romania as my own, and I got to meet people and land. And as it's grown, it's also just been amazing to see partnerships and intimacies and not just loverships, but like friendships, long-lasting friendships that emerge, self-organizing. And I've been in communities that die and dissolve. I've been in, certain institutions and things that can't hold it. And I think even though Jinkies constantly rebirths itself as a business, as a teaching, as a community, to watch genuine relationships being formed is human and divine, like presence. That's a gift. So for me, it has just been, I'm just humbled every time I get on calls with people from all over the world, from all different walks of life, choosing to just be with each other in rooms and share honestly what's emerging for them. And we just hold that witness together.
It's interesting as well, because usually, and I didn't realize this question was going to come, so here we go. Usually when I think now with the digital age, there is a real potential, and there is a lot of blooming, beautiful sense of community online. And I'm just going to speak to it. There's this creator economy thing. And the creator economy is also, it sees community as an opportunity for monetization. And it sounds loaded because I'm here as a creator and we're creating content and we're having this conversation, right? And obviously I'm biased because I love the Gene Keys and I totally honor that. And I know you do too. The Gene Keys, I wish there was a better way of saying that, doesn't reek of that.
Mm.
And it's a real gift, but also the fact that you can download your contemplation for like 99 cents or $1. It's like, yeah, I get that, and it's the retreat is like $175 for like 6 months worth of some of the deepest work you'll ever do in your life. And it's remarkable just how that doesn't do that when everything, well, not everything else, but most of the other stuff I encounter online does do that. How have you held conscious awareness of that happening in some way? And what have your insights been around holding space for sort of what the collective is doing versus what you guys are trying to anchor as an intention?
I think we have to have these conversations, and I'm glad that you're willing to have that conversation, because we do live in a capitalist society, and we are playing with these systems in one way or another. And how we interact with those systems, for me, back to that integrity key and that greed to aspiration key, how we do it is vital to me. And a part of what's kept me going inside the Gene Keys as an organization and its connection to community is that Centropy, that generosity, the passionate generosity, that being here doing this work is actually what drew all of us that work in the business, for example. Like, we all love the Gene Keys. We didn't hire the pro from, we hire families that have been touched by this work. And then it grows through people who have served countless hours translating and sharing and holding community spaces and just giving, there's this generosity of spirit. And I think that's critical. And like you said, we can smell it when it's not. And that doesn't mean the organization is not perfect at all. In fact, I think that's a part of why I love this work, why I do still keep coming, is that we do that inner work. We have to have these conversations of greed and of integrity and of ethics and of what kind of business can we build if this is a carrier. Richard talked about it once at the in a Pearl retreat, of there's a business model that is being created in this time that is going to carry us like a raft into this next time period when the system will actually allow a blossoming, truly generous, the melting of money into its genuine prosperity. But we can't, I've seen many idealistic, high-minded, idealistic, powerful people fall and not be able to sustain because they're either living too far in the vision of the future and not feet on the ground here, or they get stuck on the conditioning takes over. And I think we've been having to do that as an organization, constantly working with that. And then the community has to do that too. It's like we can't, I'm really grateful you don't feel taken advantage of in that way or leveraged in that way, because I think that's a really powerful thing you said there about creator culture, because I think creator culture emerged from a decentralization of media companies being able to control who makes what money where. So there was this like spark of the individual spirit to be its truth. And then, mass is how that makes it sustainable. So suddenly community became a revenue model instead of the organic growth. And I think that the Gene Keys has benefited from the fact that if people are genuinely touched, they want to share it with someone for no other reason than it's helped them. And that's what I approach everything that I share, and even why I don't go on things because of all the internal things, and I came here because one, I felt inspired by what you do, right? So there's this is a safe space for me to come with my authenticity and myself, and in turn hopefully feed and nourish people instead of be asking and taking. And I think if each of our actions are generally a service to nourish others, then the torus, the reciprocal nature of the universe, wants to feed that back. And that's, for me, Centropy in its flow and in its action.
I love that. And that was going to be one of my questions. Can you define Centropy? Because it's a word that is very commonly used in the Gene Keys, but until you enter the Gene Keys sort of environment, like, what does Centropy mean, bro? Please.
That's a very good question. Centropy, one of the Trinity aspects that Centropy is synthesis, this idea of an interconnected universe, a fractal journey into the interconnected universe of wisdom. And the Gene Keys is a synthesis, and there are other synthesis wisdoms that just reflect on the interconnectedness. And it's the teachings, it's the education, it's the Dharma way that keeps us on our path. And then the synarchy, a governance with, is what that word means, right? Archy with sin. A governance with, a self-organizing, nature can be a synarchy. It can respond to what are the needs of its environment and how everything is interwoven. And what if us humans could actually be a part of a harmonious organism that was built through individuals, loving partnerships, lasting friendships, families, integrated into these building blocks of a society that actually worked with, that ruled with harmony. And Centropy is the energy that flows through that system. This idea that entropy, the law of entropy is missing its other half, it would be what Richard would say, right? It's like everything is dissolving and devolving into entropy. Well, that Taurus imagery is so strong for me for the Centropy. When you see it in the Gene Keys, we use a grail with a Taurus, because it is this honoring of the reciprocal nature of life, and given you shall receive, and I breathe therefore I prosper. These like cyclical movements. So Centropy can be philanthropy. It can be I've overflowing my grail, so I want to serve those that are underserved and underprivileged and don't have enough. But it's also investing in families. It's also investing in how I walk in the world. It's not just money that flows through that system. It's love that flows through the system. It's wisdom that flows through the system. So Centropy, to summarize, I would say, is the reciprocal energy that can move through a healthy system. And I'd like to move our businesses towards more centropic, which includes generosity at its heart and philanthropy at its heart, a love of humanity at its heart, and hopefully humanity in connection with the natural world, in harmony with this world.
It's incredible, brother. And thank you so much for sharing that, because I think, and this is going to bleed into my next question, but just the remark I wanted to make is, and I know when I've mentioned money is going to be an interesting thing, but even just the fact that, like I said before, what you're looking to access is literally like a couple of coffees away, when you come to the Gene Keys, or a couple of meals away. And it's not this, hey, here's a $15,000 program. And I'm not doubting that, like I've put together 12-month programs myself and helped people through those transformations, and it's been an absolute gift. But also you can feel what you're sharing about Centropy and how everything feeds itself, because making it so accessible makes it so easy to come back for the next teaching as well, and the download and everything, and your life just gets so much richer and fuller for it. It's really a gift. The remark I wanted to make was, you mentioned in Centropy, you mentioned the word fractal, and I kind of want to understand, well, not kind of, I really want to understand, and I'm hoping I can kind of get it. Because you're so multidimensional, the fractal doors and where that leads us. Because when you were sharing Centropy, and when I look at the business model of the Gene Keys as well, even the fact when I come to it and something is priced at 99 cents, I'm like, or $1, or even $1.70, for certain things, it's like, oh, that says so much to me, just even on the packet, right? And I've always remarked on this, like being a speaker from stage, that touch wood, there's this infrared and ultraviolet, and I just like to sort of contemplate that for a sec, of the messaging that gets communicated out that we can't even see, right? But when you're being inauthentic, or you're not saying something that totally resonates, like everybody else feels that. They can't explain it because they don't know it to be not on, but it turns them off, right? And I find that really interesting in this Centropy conversation, because when you start looking at it, it's like, yeah, we see the chalice, but we don't necessarily see the waves coming through it in that toroidal energy field. You mentioned, as you started to explain Centropy, the word fractal, and I would love to sort of use that as a wave to move into what Fractal Doors, what does that mean to you? What is being birthed in that space? What's emerging? Yeah.
I love that question. I think that I often will say fractal, and then the other one that's especially in the last few years, mycelial is a really important word that's like coming into our conscious awareness, and these patterns that can replicate that are already they're revealing underlying fundamental patterns and frequencies of the world. And those that go down the sacred geometry and cosmometry wormhole in their life, if they've ever looked at like how math is a beautiful language of love of the universe, showing that we are held in harmony in physics, in actual proven fact, there is harmony. So fractal, for me, it touches on the fractal doors in particular, came as a heart way of there are many keys to open the one door of love. There are many ways that we enter into that awareness. And any of those fractal doors, they come of fractals are self-similar and self-unique. They're replicating. So there's a individual nature, and then there is a pattern that they reveal. So we're each individuals. We're each unique. No gene key is ever going to tell the amazing magic of who you are. That's the full combination of everything you've been through. And yet there's a fractal resonance, there's a line, there's a pattern, there's a kinship between us, there's a kinship between the other people you meet with same gene keys and same luminaries and same inspirations. And so that fractal line suddenly shows, wait a minute, this uniqueness of who I am is also interwoven and interconnected. And that brings hope to places that a lot of divisiveness in our world keeps us isolated, keeps us siloed, keeps us alone, keeps us inadequate. And I think that's where a lot of disease runs rampant, is that we don't feel actual community support because it's probably not there, and we don't feel government support, or we don't feel education support because the systems haven't been enlivened with that connectiveness. But then you have people going on deep pilgrimages, whether it's through spiritual traditions or through medicines or through their own meditations or through their own family, trauma and crisis. What an amazing way to find love. So there's many fractal ways that we enter into that moment of, wait a minute, we're actually all connected. We're connected through our suffering. We're connected through our love. We're connected through our genius. So for me, it's that impact that even though I'm one person, I won't be able to move a mountain, but me doing my inner work is connected into this fractal, into all of us. And that's where I can keep giving, even when I try to do my best of giving externally as well, because that's a natural outflowing. But also some of the best work I can do is keep being a loving being, a kind being, so that when crisis happens, I'm impacting, I'm modeling, I'm resonating into the fractal that we can love through this challenge. And that's where inner work, I think, has its mycelial impact into that outer culture that we don't always feel we have agency in.
I love it. And you do offer yourself up in this space for people to come, unpack, explore themselves. Again, very affordably online. And it's just, your website is fractaldoors.com, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. And
so that has the imagery, which is my mathematical brain, that you'll see the cymatics and the fractals and imagery. And then also I offer work with people and businesses and
Yeah, it's incredible. And oh man, I tried so hard. I made it, look, I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I made it through 40 plus minutes of this episode without talking about music and handpans. And honestly, I'm patting myself on the back. I know you guys may or may not understand, but you mentioned maths and then you mentioned music. And dude, like, there are just some things that are just like, I totally feel space monkey flying through space. Like, I don't want to say humans are dumb, but there are some things that make me feel like, I watched this video the other day, and this owner went and got a biscuit out of the drawer, put it on the table, walked away, and the dog ate the biscuit that was on the table, and then went in the drawer, pulled out another biscuit, put it back on the table, and then set it on the table. And the owner comes back and goes, "Good boy," and feeds it the biscuit. And I was just like, my remark was like, man, why is everybody smarter than me? So with that in mind, I sort of, from that place, I feel like, space monkeys just floating on this big blue ball with water, like such a gift and mystery at the same time. And yet there's this just intelligence about random things that we have downloaded, and maths is totally one of those, like, I love to nerd out on. And then I feel like the expression of that in music, like especially when you look at a handpan, it opens you up to patterns. And then your patterns turn into music, and music turns into emotion, and then it moves you, and then you're like, wow, like there's something about music and maths and frequency that just starts to go, there are some things that we're clued into that are seriously divine, which, I just wanted to revel in that with Zach, your thoughts?
I
Yeah.
love it. You're speaking my heart song, 100%. It's when I was not, I didn't consider myself a musician. I had been trained in percussion, so like I have background, but I never thought of that as music. And when the handpan came, it was something that was intuitive because it utilizes the magic of the physics of harmony, right? And it isn't just pretty notes. So, like I don't know if you've seen cymatics, right? When you vibrate water or sand with specific
And the
frequencies.
patterns
If
come
you
out with the sand.
the
Yeah.
patterns, they're these geometries that emerge out of frequencies, and specifically too the physics of like a perfect fifth makes a Merkaba, makes a shape in space that feels harmonic, and you can play that major fifth chord to any culture and they're going to feel something inside themselves. So it's not subjective like politics and culture and language. It's
Totally.
physics.
You start looking at the pattern that Venus makes around the Earth in like in a cycle, and you start ending up with this like mandala looking shape, and you're like, holy God, that's like the perfect mandala. Do the same thing with plotting Mars's or like travels around Earth, and you're like you said, it's not subjective. It's like, wow, it's really, really, really trippy. The healing. Can we call it a healing when you go from I'm not a musician and I'm
Yes.
percussion, and then the handpan pops into your world, and you're like, oh, I I could do this, and I sounds good to me. Like that's all that matters now. There's a healing in that instrument. Would you say? Would you not say? Yeah.
100%. I think the two main things for me were having something with permission to be in a flow state. Because flow state in itself is healing. It's the heal. It moves things in the meridians. It creates the alpha brainwave state. You are entering into a more harmonic state in your being. So when you have permission with resonant sounds, and the way the mandala of the handpan is a modality of harmony. So everything is still contained in that harmony. The whole instrument's made that way. So when I surrendered into it, it was I had lost my partner as she had died, and I had been on this healing journey of personal
Sorry to
growth,
hear.
and I just wanted a way to carry music with me because I love music. You listen to music and you're moved by music, and it was a way to connect to it. And like you said, it sounds good to me. It's in my own trance state. It's in my own permission space. And luckily, it sounds good to others because it's not playing a chromatic instrument where you can play a lot of
Mess
dissonant
things up.
tones. Yeah, exactly. There's no mistakes. I mean, what
How
can we
good
live
is
in a
that?
world where there are no mistakes? You are
It's-
a genius. You are a musician. There are no mistakes. That's what we all need to grow up as musicians.
Yeah, the handpan has definitely healed me in very similar ways to you. So, just permission to just be, explore, play, and yeah, that no mistakes thing is really, really a gift. Really, really a gift. I will come off the music tangent, guys. I thank you so much for hanging out with me on that space, and I tried my best to not go there. I just and so quickly the bringing that back into oftentimes one of the biggest things I get from also yourself when contemplating the gene keys is because it can be so, oh, this is my shadow work and this is my gift and this is my siddhi, and okay, let's just understand that the siddhi maybe is not for us right now, and maybe don't spend too much time explaining on your shadow. Even working with your gift can be such a heady, neural, contemplative thing. But I find yourself in particular being a point within the facilitation sort of Centropy, saying, hey, feel into where it lands in your body, and you will notice things moving in your spine differently as you continue to contemplate things. Your awareness and the importance of bringing what is a potential thought and contemplation and anchoring it to within the field, within the body. Can you unpack that for us? Where does that come from, and why is it so important?
Because I'm a heady person. And I think because for me, the access point was the aha, was the like my wizard mind, my science mind, my I devour all the information, and then my relationships weren't changing for the better. It's like it's a rude awakening of like I have all the aha, and I can say all the words right, but my heart and my soul and my body and my belly aren't connected with what I'm saying. And luckily, I had loving people, both elders and peers, that would reflect back to me like there's more work there, and so it was when I started to really take more time more patience. So I, like, for example, I read everything about the gene keys, read every single thing that was possibly available, and then entered the Venus sequence for real. And then really sat at the altar of Venus and said, I will let this into my life and really go with this stream of wisdom and let myself be seen by the goddess, by love, by grace. I will see myself. That commitment changed everything and made it from a beautiful mental exercise to I'm crying in a ball, or I'm sweating and I don't know why, or I'm feeling my spine, like feeling what anger does in my spine, and having luckily a technology to keep asking myself, like, what am I feeling? Where is that feeling coming from? What is it trying to teach me? Allow, accept, embrace. It's gentleness and it's patience. It's compassion. And it's a relationship with the shadow as a teacher of breath. That has to happen every day for it to do anything. So that's why I say it a lot in facilitation, is I have to keep doing it. I have to keep bringing the aha into the, but this heart has, and this body has done it this way for so long to keep myself safe. And it's not enough to just be like, oh, aha, I judge others and I have this shadow. My body has cellular memory of how that kept me safe my whole life. That takes time. And it takes being in the body and listening to the body for it to actually unwind, in my experience.
And allowing it to expand every time it wants to contract as you feel into it. Weird thing to be doing, but just giving you feedback. Amrit, shush. It's happening. I have to say, because the Gene Keys is so online, that medicine of inviting us consistently back into our body, brother, is, well, for me, I can speak for me, instrumental. Like, it's been, I said instrumental, but I promised I wouldn't go there. But yeah, it's actually, it's super helpful, super helpful. Because it can be so easy. Like, you're on a device, you're tuning into something, community online, another digital thing, more heady, and then every time you're like, remember to feel how it feels in your spine. Does your spine feel different? You know, does it feel more like, does it feel tighter? Does it feel open? And I'm like, and it was just another litmus, like a frog in the ecosystem for me to tune into. But it is a really useful one, I found. And it grounded the thing from online and digital and headiness, which I'll put both my hands up with you. I suffered as well, and back into the body. So I just really wanted to thank you for that. You mentioned the Venus sequence, and there's. I just went through the Venus retreat, and bro, I don't want to say this, and I'm gonna say it. It's blisteringly beautiful.
Ooh, I love blisteringly beautiful. 100%.
Man, wow. Yeah. I became a father, and so I turned into I became a father, and I'm like, properly a husband, I would say, touch wood. And so it was like, Venus, because it was always calling, but for a while it was just like, I could feel it, but there's also this like, it's not right. And then the first time it was offered right after this change in life, it was like, yep, you're coming. And I'm like, yep, we're going. And then I kind of knew why I was holding off on it to be my last one, because I did the Pearl even before I did the Venus, which was really, you did it a bit backwards. For those that are tuning in, I'm sort of speaking in like gobbledygook. The first sequence in the Gene Keys is your activation, the second is the Venus, and the third is the Pearl. Maybe that's a good question to ask you, just for those who are tuning in. Activation in your terms, and then can you describe each of the three sequences? Why not?
I like that. You know, the activation sequence is grounding into you, and it's our most popular for a reason. It's your prime gifts, and it talks about your life's work and your evolution, these core challenges and ways that you show up and shine in the world. And when people get their free profile and they read those first few lines, it's talking about your prime gifts, and sometimes it's right on the surface in a good way, and then but it goes deeper. It goes into your radiance and into your purpose. And it's this joke of what we think we do in the world, our life's work, is different than our purpose of who we are as a human being.
In itself, it's just like, if you could just pause for what, that is like 1/1000th of what you'll take away from the Gene Keys, potentially, right? But that in of itself was just like, the first time I was like, I like just threw the book down, and I was just like, shit, I won't take any more notes on any more journals until I contemplate this thing. like the activation sequence, and I know you were going to explain all three, but I butted in.
No, this is why you're a guide. That's brilliant.
The idea of the fact that you're like, because we think of our purpose all the time as this thing that I'm here to do, like as my service to others. And the Gene Keys goes, actually, and it's circular, but I sort of like to see it, someone mentioned this, tipped forwards. And there is your purpose for what you're here to do for yourself, and there is your life's work, and they are not the same thing. There is a serious correlation, and joyful correlation. It's not that serious. It's beautiful. But it's, even just that as a contemplation going, it's okay for my motives to be different for what I do as to what the world receives from me.
And it immediately makes it so much like, think of all the energy that we've been using to try to make those two things the same thing and suffering in the in-between. That's back.
Don't want to talk about it. End of podcast. I mean, yeah, bro. Yes. We force a lot, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the purpose is never about forcing. Relax into the current of your purpose that lives in who you are. That's the juice of the activation sequence. Is it helps me find pathways into that. But the relaxing into my core stability, that's what I get from the activation sequence. And then it lets me live my life's work. And so my greed aspiration key gets to do its work only because of this deep detachment and celebration in my purpose gene key. And that's the roots that feed the whole tree of who I am. But it's not an achieving part of us. And I think that mind flip has been so supportive in making my life a lot more peace filled and a lot more contentment and then blossoming into success. There can be success still. There can be legacy. There can still be great mountains to climb, but it comes from a different place in my belly now, and that feels better. It feels, it can still
Centered.
be hard, but it feels better.
Centered, grounded. Yeah. I interrupted in the activation sequence. That's what it's dedicated to. Venus is love and relationships. Expounding upon that a little bit, brother.
And you'll see in the profile, it's these red spheres that kind of spiral up the chart. And I always think of it as the inner plumbing. So they're deeper unconscious places in ourselves, but there are triggers in our defense systems and how we attract relationships in our and repel relationships in our life. And they're lessons of how we integrate our childhood, patterns and our present day relationships to catalyze love, or close down and react and resist and push back. And so I call it the inner plumbing because it's like I need to cleanse and let this fluidity, this Venus stream move through, and then it shows up in my outer life. And our relationships they emerge from our purpose and they take us to our core. I think that's an important part of the journey, is like our purpose for ourselves, who we are in this body, going through the dance of masculine and feminine and Venus and Mars, and dancing through all these triggers all the way back home to our core, to the deepest wounding that is our greatest medicine for the world, our talent for the world. And that's the journey of trauma and ecstasy that lives in the Venus.
If I was honest with you, which I will be.
Good, I appreciate it.
Not sure why I just put it that way. But anyway, here we are. Go. The interesting thing was for me that I often reflect on this because of the core of doubt, right? So I often reflect on this in the podcast. I see myself asking this question again and again of very different people of all different walks of life, because the podcast is dedicated to spirituality, and a lot of people are wholeness oriented, or a lot of people are healing oriented, and very rarely do you find the reconciliation of the two. And now the reconciliation of the two, I'm finding it in places. Maybe it's a reflection on where I'm at. But it's interesting because one implies brokenness to heal, and one implies your wholeness, everything's perfect. And the mind, right, is struggling to reconcile those two facts. But it's the natural, those polarities are what give meaning to everything in the spectrum of life, right? But I find I was never really going to admit to a core wound. Like I just wasn't, like, pardon me, but F that, was the cynic that sort of, like yourself, came to the Gene Keys 12 years ago. And I have to, applaud's not the right word, give my thanks is not deep enough either. hang my hat on, if anybody ever asked me about core wounding, it would say, hey, if you wanted to work on that, the only way I would recommend is to go through the Gene Keys Venus sequence, because it holds space for that wound with so much wholeness. It's a gift. It's more than a gift. It's like, wow, like you can actually really allow yourself to look at those parts whilst being so held. And again, it's potentially just a digital thing. Sorry. In some ways, there is that perspective on it, right? But yeah, it's definitely holographic, and there's so much more holding you through that. But yeah, the Venus is not for the faint-hearted, as you all say, and I can attest to that. Touch wood. But it's also, it goes up from there to the pearl, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So that core is, and you'll see this in your profile, your free profile, you'll see these colored spheres. It's this red that turns into blue. It's that place where that core wound becomes our vocation. And the pearl sequence is the vocation moving out and affecting culture and reminding us how to shine out our life's work, our brand. It's the prosperity sequence, and it's teaching about how the lucidity of our mind, the simplification of our mind, of our breath, of alignment, and the naturalness of what we're really here to give, to serve, to be, to shine, that unlocks this pearl of prosperity. That's not about achievement. That's not about the metrics of success that we put on the world. It's about the blossoming of our cultivation as an offering in our life and as breath. And so I think that it helps to rewire prosperity and wealth dynamics and things like that, while also giving you the chunk of like, and you're here to do this, because you don't want to activate. So it links back up to the top in that way of like, go be your genius, but do it from the depths of your core and impact the world from a different maybe dimension than we're used to in the wealth, prosperity, achievement minded set.
And it really rewinds the mindset, because it brings you home to, I breathe, therefore I prosper. And just bringing you home to like, you're looking for so much around you, bro, and dividing yourself from here and now into a future version of yourself, which you don't even know exists, to try and call it in, attract it. And it's like, just come back, be whole. And from here, you've got all the resources you've ever needed. I breathe, therefore I prosper. And what am I breathing into? Oh, here's your pearl. Oh, dope. Touch wood. So a real gift. Man, Elijah, I'm conscious. I can talk to you forever. I would love to feel into a couple of questions before I let you go. What's the hardest gene key you've had to look at? Like, what's been the hardest one for you to look at? Was it the greed one? And then and maybe you can explain a little bit around contemplation of that key, if you're okay to go there.
I love that question. I think right now it definitely feels like the hardest. It's the one I've been with the longest, and it's still here. And greed, when you said that earlier about communities can smell, the greed of
the blood in the water for the shark.
Absolutely. And that's something that I a part of it is about ambition and drive. And lack of ambition. And I'm constantly struggling with that back and forth. Like, to be greedy enough to be on a platform talking and taking up people's time is really difficult for me. I really don't want to take from anyone. And aspiration constantly asks this hungry dragon in me of, what are you taking and why? Or am I taking it for myself? That's what greed does. Am I taking it to survive because I don't feel like I'm safe? That's what greed does. Aspiration says, I want to take so that we can thrive. That hungry dragon wants to leverage that like kundalini energy to actually rise up together. And so it's made me face the places where I have abused and misused. I have a very talent with words. I have a talent in a lot of areas, and I've abused and misused that energy in different ways, subtle times, big other times. To be in that conversation is critical for me, because then there's other times where I haven't been the one maybe doing the greed out there, but life has put me right next to it. Can I be in my integrity? Can I be in my aspiration?
As you're witnessing it.
Can I grow with this energy and not react to it the way I don't want to make it wrong and sin it inside myself, but also not to appease and bypass there's a reason the dragon's in there. There's a reason why that energy is like, actually, that version of energy isn't utilizing it to the best of the aspiration for the we. So how can I be greedy for, no, let's bring that resource in for benefit. And that's a very dangerous line. And I hate it. I hate power for that reason. I hate leadership for that reason. I hate money for that reason. It's like, it is so easy to harm, and to how could I ever be foolish enough to think I have wisdom, to foolish enough to think that I have the right to be in power, because I've seen so much of its abuse in my life and in the world around me. So that key constantly makes me rebirth myself. And I think it's destiny, ascension. There's this destiny line of the liquidation, the alchemical liquidation of money, the alchemical liquidation of power, and sex, drugs, and rock and roll, medicine, and on all the powerful ways. They're all dangerous lines that there's a reason why we fear them. There's a reason why we love them. There's a reason why they can break us out of patterns that we haven't been able to see before. And it humbles me, because I know what the dragon can do when it's not in integrity. So maybe why those two keys are really powerful today is I think they're constantly my harder agents that I have to work with.
Thank you so much for sharing that, brother, and going there. And as you're contemplating yours, I see a common thread that I see my keys as well, and I can't help but see them in the collective around me as well. And that whole as within, so without is so potently available in our contemplations. And for those tuning in, just letting you know, there's a whole, we're discussing contemplation. We've mentioned it a few times. There's a whole episode with Richard on the Inspired Evolution podcast for you to go check out. I intentionally didn't ask Elijah too much about it because there was more ground to cover. But Richard wrote the book, The Art of Contemplation, and we go deep in there over for an hour and 15 minutes over there as well, for you guys to go check out. I'll link it into the show notes below, as I will be linking Fractal Doors. And whether you like it or not, I'm putting a SoundCloud in the show notes. Anything else you'd like to point people to, Elijah, before I wrap things up around here?
Oh, I love that the music can be in there. I'll give you the Bandcamp too. I think wonderland.bandcamp.com. There's just so many amazing musicians, and may it inspire your contemplations and nourish your soul.
Tracks like New Life and but this is I'll definitely link that in. Anything else you wanted to point people to from that wanted to check out more about Elijah from this point?
Check out the Jinkies, and see me on the journey inside there. Join in a way that feels natural to you, and talk to Amrit, like be in this conversation together. And I would love to just meet you on the journey, because I think that's what inspires me, is seeing people relaxing into them. It's just an honor to be here and to share. Thank you.
Oh, Brother Bear, I could thank you for today's conversation, but I have to say it's a lifetime's worth of work that you've put into this. The Gene Keys, 12 years, but yourself longer than that, maybe even multiple lifetimes. So just honoring and acknowledging you and your path, brother. And it is such a treat for us to be able to tune into you here today. I'm definitely going to say that on behalf of myself and the Inspired Evolution audience, but also I'm just going to take the liberty of just going, as part of the Gene Keys tribe, bro, like the space you hold in there, and just the way you navigate yourself. And I can imagine, thank you so much for popping the lid open in terms of how much of a dance there is for you of doing your own inner work, going through the facilitation role. I have received nothing but the utmost of integrity from you in that space, and it's helped me find more integrity in my system, literally. So just, man, on behalf of all of us, thank you so much for showing up the way that you do, building the platform out the way that you have, man. It is the best website ever. Like, seriously, just not even without a shot, not even gassing you up. It's like I said, it's the most elegant beast I've ever come across. It's incredible. Your gifts are definitely multi-talented and multifold, and it's such a pleasure to receive them and bask in them. So glad you're here. Thank you so much for this conversation, this episode.
Thank you.
Inspired Evolution tribe and audience, thank you so much for tuning in. You made it all the way through a conversation and an episode. Man, you guys are phenomenal. Love you so much. And I can probably speak on behalf, actually, I'm going to do it. I'll speak on behalf of both of us. It is an absolute honor to be brothers walking home by your sides. If you guys want to tune in further, here is the very next best video, Richard Rudd, Art of Contemplation, to understand what contemplation's about. And we will see you very soon. Stay inspired. Keep evolving. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way to its end. Obviously, you absolutely love this podcast, and I want to thank you so much for watching this all the way through. Here is another video that's perfectly curated just for you to watch as the next best video to keep your inspiration flowing, to keep you evolving, to keep you going. Check it out now.